How's it going, everyone? It's Harvey from Weatherspoon 5000, and in this video, of course, we're going to talk about the major storm that's expected to impact the East Coast by this Thanksgiving weekend, and we'll determine if we're going to see a major winter storm out of this significant storm that's expected to strengthen quite a bit by the time it reaches the East Coast. But before I begin, make sure to subscribe if you want to see more weather-related content. So to begin, let's take a look at the European model, and in my previous videos, we have been talking about whether or not there's a possibility we could see this strengthen into a significant storm, because it was still uncertain whether or not we'll see it strengthen. We'll see it strengthen enough to the point where we could consider a significant storm. But now there seems to be a growing consensus from the computer models that more likely than not we are going to see a powerful storm develop off the East Coast. So we should expect impacts by this Thanksgiving weekend, because now we have both the European and the computer model taking a significant storm where the millibar pressure drops down to the 980s and 970s at times in both computer model depictions. So it's more likely than not we're at least going to see a major storm right along the East Coast. But there's still questions regarding whether or not we'll see snow out of this significant storm, because of course the amount of cold air still has yet to be seen, and of course we need to see, and it's still uncertain how strong exactly this storm will become based on the computer models, despite the fact that there's growing consensus that there likely will be a major storm. Taking a look at the European models depiction, we do see that this storm's pressure drops down to 999 millibars, and now it seems like both the computer models are agreeing that there's at least going to be a significant enough jet stream dip behind this trough that's going to allow for enough of an unstable environment to rapidly intensify this storm as it continues to head further eastward, as there was still uncertainty regarding how much cold air will be behind this low pressure system. But it seems like there's going to be just enough of a strong northerly flow associated with this low pressure system that we're going to see enough instability arise right around the middle of the United States for the convection to occur, a higher rate of convection, and more lift overall right around the East Coast for a major storm to develop, a major nor'easter, I should say. And we do see that negative tilt with the jet stream, which means that there's a highly unstable environment right now. And we do see some snow right along the northwestern portion of this storm, where the European model is more strictly expecting snow right around the interior portions of the northeast. Now, along the major East Coast cities such as Boston, New York City, Philadelphia, you're probably wondering if there's a chance that the snow will move further southward to impact you guys. And to that, I say that it's still a little bit too uncertain, because of course if I'm taking a look at the forecast hour I'm going at, we're at 138. This forecast goes 138 hours from now, so there's still a lot of time between now and 6 days for the forecast to change, because of course we're gonna need to really determine how much cold air will be locked in place right around the northeast, and that really all depends on these next few troughs that move through the East Coast, because of course we have this trough now exiting the northeast, and depending on how strong and persistent that northerly push is will determine how much cold air will be locked in place in the northeast to really determine which areas of the northeast get snow. And of course this other trough will play a major role depending on how strong the northerly flow is. That will determine how much snow each region of the United States will experience, because the more cold air there is, the more widespread of course the snow will be, and it's really all going to be determined by how strong the northerly push will be associated with these next few troughs that are expected to move through. So we're going to need to pay close attention to the northerly winds over the next several days to really determine how much cold air will be locked in place in the northeast to determine how much snow you're bound to experience. But I wouldn't say it'll become more certain until the Tuesday and Wednesday time frame, once majority of the troughs that are going to be just to the United States border move through, because that's when we'll determine how much cold air will be in the northeast by the time this trough begins building right around the middle portion of the United States. And based on what the European model is stating at this time, the snow is currently locked right now to the interior northeast, but you still see that even if you're not necessarily going to get involved with snowfall, you see that on the northeast coast is still experiencing very heavy rainfall, very strong winds, so you still will experience impacts regardless of whether you experience snow or not, where we see the European model want to drop this pressure down to 968 millibars, and that's equivalent to a category 3 hurricane, which is quite strong and will bring a widespread wind event for much of the east coast of the United States. So it's definitely something you want to pay close attention to whether you experience snow or not. Now, take a look at what the GFS model is stating. The GFS model, while it does also, like I said, want to bring a significant storm to the northeast, it isn't as lenient as bringing as much snowfall, as it seems like the GFS model does not expect enough cold air to be locked in place right around the northeast for this to be much of a snowfall event. We do see some snow right around the northern portion of Maine, but that's about it. We still do see a significant storm where this storm's pressure drops down to the 970s by the time this reaches Maine, and we still see very strong winds associated with it. So regardless of whether it snows or not, you still need to pay close attention to the potential of flooding rains and strong winds associated with this storm. But we do see that it isn't much of a snowmaker in the GFS is model scenario, so there's still uncertainty regarding this. And I think part of the reason is that we see that for one thing is that the GFS model, while it does expect just enough of a strong northerly push to strengthen this storm, we don't see that persistent amount of northwesterly wind component that's going to continuously push the cold air far south enough to create a highly unstable environment and enhance the chance of snowfall. Because we do see that while there is a significant jet stream dip, we see that this cold air we pretty much see an upper level low develop right around the Midwest rather than entirely connected trough that's associated with the jet stream. And that, of course, will significantly weaken the storm's potential when it comes to its strengthening process, because, of course, it doesn't have that unlimited supply of cold air to create a highly unstable environment for the duration of its time when it moves eastward. So we see that, but it still strengthens quite a bit, but we do see that there's just a lack of cold air associated with this trough, so it doesn't produce much snowfall at all. We're gonna need to wait and see how much cold air will be behind this trough, and we won't find out, I'd say, until, like I said, the Tuesday to Wednesday timeframe. Once this trough actually moves ashore right around the Pacific Northwest, that's when we'll really get a good idea of how strong the trough is, and as a result, that will determine how strong the northerly winds will be to really induce that instability and to create the possibility of a colder air mass in the United States for a much more significant snowstorm to occur. So I'll keep you guys updated regarding any changes with the forecast models, but just know that along the East Coast, you might not be entirely ruled out of snow just yet. At this point, it seems like the slightly more likely scenario is that the interior northeast will experience a major snowfall, but I wouldn't be surprised if we see any major changes with the forecast, so where maybe the East Coast cities get involved with some snow depending on how much cold air will be in the northeast. That's certainly still a possibility, so don't let your guard down just yet. And regardless of whether you experience snow or not, you still could experience impacts when it comes to heavy rain and strong winds. So it's definitely something to keep in mind going into this Thanksgiving weekend, where I know a lot of Americans tend to travel, and I think that's the most traveled weekend for the United States for the entire year. So it's definitely something to be aware of for your Thanksgiving travel plans, as this storm is expected to be significant regardless of whether it brings snow to the northeast or not. So make sure keep that in mind. I wouldn't rule out the possibility of maybe some coastal flooding as well, because this storm could be very powerful. Like I said, we could see the millibar pressure drop down below 970. So that's very significant and equivalent to almost a category 3 hurricane, which would bring a strong, huge wind field and very strong winds in certain portions of Northeast. Now, let me show you guys what the computer models are expecting when it comes to snowfall and rainfall. Let's first take a look at the European model. So take a look at So taking a look at that, we do see that the European model does bring heavy snowfall for a lot of interior portions of the Northeast, especially the more mountainous areas where a large portion of Vermont and the northern portion of New Hampshire and upstate New York experiences well over a foot of snow, and we see that snow extend to northern Pennsylvania as well. So this would bring significant snowfall if we were to see snowfall associated with this significant storm, and we could potentially see that move further southward if enough cold air is locked in place. Now, compare that to the GFS model. The GFS model does not want to bring much of any snowfall to the United States associated with this storm, as we do see that most of the heavy snow is mainly focused in right around the northern portion of Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine, but we don't see that snow extend into upstate New York or Pennsylvania at all. So this is definitely something we're going to need to watch over the next several days, and we're going to need to really determine how much cold air will be in the Northeast. But I'll keep you guys updated in terms of rainfall. However, that could be another issue that the Northeast will need to contend with this storm. So if we were to take a look at the rainfall forecast, the total accumulated rainfall over the next as this significant storm moves eastward, we do see that a large portion of the Northeast easily experiences 3 to 5 inches of rain, and which is very significant and could cause flooding in certain areas, and of course winds will be very strong as well. So make sure to be aware of all the possible impacts associated with this storm. Now, another thing I want to show you guys is the North Atlantic Oscillation, where we do see that approaching Thanksgiving weekend, we do see that the forecast is that we're expecting a deep negative North Atlantic Oscillation, which could mean that we're more likely going to experience a significant jet stream dip, and that's pretty telling why the computer models have adjusted their forecasts to where they want to bring significant storm, because now it's expected that a negative North Atlantic Oscillation is expected to take place this Thanksgiving weekend. So of course we're going to see a more significant jet stream dip that will trigger the unstable environment in the middle of the United States for a significant storm to develop. However, this negative North Atlantic Oscillation could also contribute to a more significant jet stream dip that will bring more cold air to the United States. So it's definitely something to be aware of as well. And take a look at my forecast when it comes to this potential major Thanksgiving winter storm. So there's that possibility of major storm for major snow for a lot of the interior portions of the Northeast, and we do see that there's still potentially a possibility we could see that snow move further southward into the major cities of the United States. I wouldn't rule out that possibility, but the most likely scenario is that we're going to see at least major snowfall right around the interior Northeast. It does become more uncertain further southward, but I'll keep you guys updated. But whether you experience heavy rain or heavy snow, you should expect strong winds associated with this storm, as it seems like this storm will be very strong. So make sure to be aware of the impacts headed into this Thanksgiving weekend. But anyways, guys, I thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe if you want to see more weather content, and I hope you guys have a great day.